Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Today we've got a fantastic guest, former professional footballer for Wolverhampton Wanderers, Mel Eves. He works as a performance coach now, also does broadcasting and writing. Had a very distinguished career in football, notably for Wolves, amongst other clubs such as Sheffield United and a few other clubs. I think you played, what 180 games for Wolves, Mel? Maybe roughly 180 games for Wolverhampton Wanderers? That's
Yeah, I played it. Yeah, I played it over 200 games if you include obviously the cup games and what have you. So it was great to play for my hometown club. Not a lot of people get to do it nowadays. It's yeah, it was really brilliant that I could go and join the players that I actually played with at school, and then it was surreal because the first training session I had when I left school, and then joined the players that I'd seen for probably a lot of them for the last 10 years from watching on the terraces at Molineux. I felt like getting an autograph book out instead of actually kicking the ball to them. So it was surreal. So that was a great feeling. And then to go on and actually play for the club for many years was just a dream come true, Jimmy.
And I can imagine, and fantastic club, Wolves. And what are some of your career highlights, Mel, at Wolves? What you look back and think, okay, what are some of the highlights for you as a player when you look back and think some things that sort of come to mind for yourself?
Well, it was brilliant, obviously, to make my debut in the old First Division, which nowadays is classed as the Premier League. It was the highest division, and I made my debut against Sir Bobby Robson's Ipswich Town, and then a few games later, I scored my first goal in the first team, and it was at Chelsea at Stamford Bridge against Peter Bonetti, the England keeper. Then the next game I played was on Match of the Day against Manchester United at Molineux, and I got the winner 10 minutes from time. We won 2-1. But that was the time when there was only one match on Match of the Day.
Okay.
You don't get the high nowadays. Every match is covered. But then I think it was just one main game, which was our game against Man United. So to be on that and then score my first goal at Molineux was brilliant. Then the next game I scored against Aston Villa. We beat Villa, big local rivals, 3-1. And that led to me going on an England tour in the summer with Sir Bobby Robson. It would be classed as an England B tour, but it was great. That was probably one of the highlights when I first started. And then, and obviously to win the League Cup at Wembley in front of 100,000 people against Nottingham Forest, who were the actual European champions at the time under the legendary Brian Clough.
Yeah.
They then went on to win the competition again, the European Cup. They'd won the League Cup twice on the trot, and they were odds on to actually win it for the third time. But we went there and beat them 1-0. So that was brilliant. So those are some of the highlights, Jimmy, of a career.
Oh, fantastic.
I was fortunate to just do something that I loved, and actually get paid for it. It was a bonus, although we didn't get paid anywhere near what the lads are getting paid now.
yeah, exactly. You know, but certainly that era in football, Mel, was just phenomenal. You had the Liverpools, the Leeds, the Nottingham Forest, and the Uniteds, and it certainly was a special era in football. And the game's changed so much, and you had so many characters. You got characters in the game now, but in my own opinion, I think the people that played the game then and the way the game was played was pretty different to now. And you'll know obviously a lot more than me. And you know, I look back and see some of the footage, Mel, and sometimes the hair on your neck stands up, and you see some of the crowds and the games, and you know, it's a phenomenal era to play football. And I suppose, like you says, these days, financially, it's a bit different for players, and there's so much more sponsorship, and the money from the broadcasting is coming into it too, and a lot's changed. But in your own opinion, Mel, now that you work as a performance coach, you still link with players and you work with players, and how much do you think the game has changed since the 70s and the 80s to now? I mean, what's the big difference, would you say, in terms of if you're starting out now, what would be the main difference between when you started out back then?
Well, there weren't any academies then, Jimmy. I mean, I was pretty rare. I actually stayed on in sixth form and took A levels, and then I only joined straight from school when I was 18. It'd be very rare to do that now. In fact, I wouldn't have done it. I would have probably left school at 16, and then you could carry on with your studies as well. Which it's a lot better setup for the boys now. But masses have changed. The pressure that's put on the kids is crazy. When you consider that you've got lads of 4, 5, and 6 being taken to the pre-academies where they've got all the coaching and everything's organised. These kids, we know that up to the age of about 6 or 7, we're just downloading machines, aren't we, Jimmy? We're just taking things in, and they haven't got. They just want to enjoy themselves. They're just working out how the world works, and then to suddenly be cast into this kind of pressurized situation seems crazy to me. They should be really just enjoying themselves. And then when you get from the clubs can actually take them on officially from 8 years old, it's then far too young for me to actually specialise in one sport. Once the crazy thing is that, as we've seen quite recently in the press, even kids as young as 8 and 9, they've got transfer fees on their head. The game's gone crazy, Jimmy, as far as that's concerned. I can understand that these clubs plough millions of pounds into facilities and they want to get their investment back, but putting all this on the psyche and the way that kids we learn as human beings just isn't congruent with the pressure that's put on them and the expectation, when they should really be just playing themselves and growing up, doing everything that you would do as a kid, to expand and to take everything in and to understand how the world works, to actually be labelled then and then, oh yes, I'm a professional footballer, which subconsciously they probably do, and then to be the vast majority, 99% plus, are then let down and released at some stage. It means that they feel like a failure. Absolutely crazy, Jim.
It is.
And that's why I mean, one of the things that I'm passionate about, I will come to what I do as my kind of day job shortly, but I'm really passionate about this because up to about 3 years ago, I was a football agent. So I've helped loads of parents and young players come through. I've helped a lot of players. I'm very proud of 3 or 4 players I've taken from virtually non-league Division 2 all the way through to the Premiership. And the thing I'm passionate about is the kids really achieving their full potential. Now, it's 2 or 3 years ago, about 3 years ago, actually deregulated and stopped becoming a football agent. I still advise on the game, and I still help I still help players, obviously. But really, that was to concentrate on being a performance master coach, which is really what I love to do. And then also I founded the Sports Parents Association, which is actually there to give impartial and informed advice to parents, to players, to coaches, to clubs, because this is all about giving the best environment and the best information, giving our kids the right information to make them self-aware. This is all about self-esteem. This is all about giving the confidence to our kids to understand that really it's all about them. It's not about what label and whether somebody comes and signs you up for a football team or you signed up for an Olympic discipline, or you signed up to play cricket or rugby or whatever sport. Now, this is all about, as we know, really emphasising that it's an inside-out job, Jimmy. We know what we mean by that. But the kids, and the parents and a lot of people are just infatuated and are drawn in by this dream of, as soon as they get their first tracksuit with either Man United or Aston Villa or Man City, Arsenal on it, they've made it, and therefore they put their whole persona as being totally related to what the label that somebody else has given them, instead of understanding that it's all about their self-confidence, doing what they love to do, and that what they do on the inside actually determines what happens to them. Not what everybody, not waiting for, oh, am I going to be kept on, or am I going to be released, or am I going to be retained? This crazy situation that you're putting your life, and the parents are putting their kids' well-being into the hands of a lot of other people that are just cherry picking, and that literally less than 1% of any of the lads that are in the game at any one time go on to make a pro, let alone make a it's in the Premier League at the top level.
That's a great point, Mel. It really is a good point. And certainly when I worked in football full time, I used to say to the lads, all things aside, you're in a great position in the sense that if you focus, just be the best you can be and educate yourselves. You can do education, you can train some great coaches, and what's going to be is going to be. And that's not to say that it's not easy. You get released and all their hopes are pinned on making it, and their pressure from their parents, from their, the younger players, the 17, 18-year-olds who've got their girlfriends, they've got their whole life network is based around being a pro football, but the chances are very minimal. I say to the lads all the time, get your education done, do your BTEC, do your MVQs, do what you can. If it doesn't work out for you, then play at the highest level you can. That's success, the best you can be. If you're good enough, you'll get there. It's a bit of a shame, I think, that there's no outlet for players to progress. I think that players keep developing until 22, 23. It's a bit of a shame that the players get released at 18. But that's beyond our control. There's nothing we can do about that. And I used to tell them, look, if you keep playing, if you're good enough, you're going to get there eventually. You just got to keep focused on the game and enjoying it. But like you said, there's some of the challenges, and having people like yourself who've been there, who've done that, to help them along the way, a mentor, a coach, so to speak, to show them the ropes a bit, goes a long way, Mel, because I think that they get so much advice from so many different areas. And I think for me, I used to get parents phoning up sometimes, and the parents are great. They're very supportive. They come to all the games, and I made some great friends in the game. Some parents we keep in touch now. But I used to get calls from parents sometimes, Mel, saying, oh, my lad's been released from such a club. He's 6'5". He runs 110 seconds flat. He's built like, and I'm like, well, okay, bring him down. And I'm like, every parent likes to think their son is the next big thing. And what I understand is that as a coach, you can only choose so many players. A lot depends on many, many things. Coming from the top of the club and the budgets and what play you need. And I said to the young lads when they were released and they were disappointed, prove me wrong. If I had my way, I'd sign you all up. We're like a family. It's the hardest thing you got to do is provide your input to get, your input's going to go towards a player being taken on. I never had final say, but you build a bond. Some of these players you've known since the 9-year-old, they're 17, they've got to go. You don't want them to go. You want to sign them all up, but there's only so much money. There's only so many places in the game, and that's why I used to sort of drum it into their head. And some of them keep in touch now and say, I'm glad I took some of your advice to educate myself. And if I don't make it in the UK, I can go out and get a scholarship in the States and get a degree and have a chance at playing out there, or come back in the UK and get a professional job. And there's so many options for them. They don't realise they get paid education. And even when they get taken as a pro, Mel, some of them think, okay, I've made it now. And you think, well, you've not made it. You've not made the game until you've played a number of games and you're on the way. And, you can, at a drop of a hat, you can lose form, get an injury, get ill, and it's all taken away. And it's a lot harder then to sort of like reboot and go again. And I think people like yourself who've been there, who've done that, if you can sort of, do what you do, and it must help them a lot, at least to be the best they can be, Mel. At least that they can look at themselves in the mirror and say, you know what, I gave it me all. I'm not a big believer in luck, Mel. I think that you make your own luck. But in saying that, you need that rub of the green sometimes. You need that ounce every now and again. And we've seen players you know, in the media last couple of years ago, the lad from Leicester, Vardy, who got released and worked hard and got back. I mean, I don't know the full story there. I don't know him, but I know other players who've been in similar situations. And it goes to show that if you keep going, you keep doing the right things, you'll get your chance. The chance will come, you know. And what would you say to players, Mel, who've had their world, you know, whatever you want to call it, 18 years of age, and around about December, January is when it's sort of they're told you've got a future in the club or you haven't. What would you say to your player? Like, what? I mean, you can't advise people. You know, everyone's in a different situation. But from your own experience, would you say you get released? What do you do from there? What would you say to play in that situation?
I think it's all about belief, Jimmy. It's all about people's perceptions of reality. You could get released. So, say for instance you're a goalkeeper. You could get released because they've only got one spot. Say it's 18. Now, if they say they've only got one spot, if the best goalkeeper in the world happens to be at your club, you could still get released because he may have matured and be slightly ahead of you at that particular time. But the clubs say we've only got room, we've only got one spot. So what do? If you're the second best goalkeeper in the world, do you just pack in, say I'm not good enough, I'm going to go, I better do something else, I'll take up knitting? You don't. You've just got to realise, okay, it's the same with me. At 18, I was still at school. At 19, I was nowhere near the first team at Wolves. I wasn't even in the reserves. I wasn't good enough to get in the reserve team. At 20, I was the leading scorer in the reserves. I was 21 before I actually made my full debut. Before I made my debut, I didn't even come on as sub before then. I made my full debut. I was 21. At 20, people like Wayne Rooney, who made his debut when he was 16, 17, had probably played 100, 200 games by the time I'd actually made my debut. So I was a late developer. If I'd have thought at 18, 19, no, I should have played games by now, I'll go and do something else. But I just had total faith that I was going to make it. But but the thing is, then players from 18 to 21, you got another year's contract. They did kind of have faith in you and give you more time. I think there's that big gap between 16 to 18 is a big learning time, and it sorts out which players are then going to go on from 18. But from 18 to 21, there's a massive gulf in this country, because sometimes instead of actually persevering with the kids 18 to 21, clubs will go and buy a ready-made player from anywhere in the world, because everybody wants to come and play in England now. We know at the Premier League level, but even at the lower leagues, even non-league, you'll get players from overseas coming because they want to get into the football in this country. So it is a difficult time, and that's why I say that if I was playing now in the same situation, as long as I didn't have, if I didn't know at 18 what I know now, like I didn't know, I probably wouldn't have had the same pathway at Wolves, because they would have bought in ready-made players for 10, 15 million, as they're doing now, because they've got owners that do that. My second club was, I went to Man City. That was after I'd ruptured my Achilles at Wolves when I was 27, height of my career. There wouldn't have been the opportunity at Man City now, because they're buying players in for 40 or 50 million, and they might not even go straight into the team. It's a different scenario, isn't it? So everything's just got pushed down the levels. The big thing is that players have to have total belief in their own ability and themselves, and they've got to understand that it's nothing, that people turning them down isn't anything to do with them. It's to do with the situation at the club at that time. As I say, you could be a brilliant player, but if the club actually has a new ownership, they bring in new management, who then brings in the players that they want, they might actually have to let people go without actually seeing them play. They just have to say, well, unless somebody is absolutely world class, sorry, I'm just bringing in world class players that are ready now. That's the point, ready now.
Yeah.
And the only point you're ready now is if you've got the experience and done it. But if you're not given that opportunity, you've then got to go to places where you're given that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely, Mel.
But if you have got total belief in your own ability and you understand that it really is an inside-out job, that how you think about yourself, then there is a time lag, obviously, Jimmy. We understand about manifesting stuff, but it will happen for you as long as you have total belief in yourself that it is happening. Now, which club, what opportunities you get, that's not your problem. You don't have to bring that on yourself. So, in other words, whether the club that you're at give you the opportunity, or whether it happens somewhere else, that will take care of itself as long as you're doing absolutely everything that you can to make yourself the best version of you that you can be. You've worked at making yourself the best version of Jimmy that you can. I've worked at making myself now the best version of Mel Eves that I can, because we know that by doing that, we can help more people, and we can also help ourselves the most. It's not if we're waiting for other people to give us confirmation how good we are. Yeah, we all like praise, but if we're waiting for that all the time and we're putting our hands in other people's, you know, giving our power away, it's not. We're in a situation where we're gonna setting ourselves up to get hurt and let down all the time. Understanding that there will be we will get knocked down. I think it's there's been some stuff I've seen lately. Yeah, get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. Get up one more time, then you get knocked down. But you keep getting knocked. You keep getting up. You keep getting up. You keep getting up. I kept getting up every time I was knocked down, and then eventually I get a chance, and I'm 21, which is probably pretty old in football to get your first opportunity. But that was because I'd probably missed. I didn't go full time until I was 18, nearly 19. By the time I'd left school, and then it took me 6 months to a year to actually get up to speed fitness wise, and my whole athletic ability wise, because I hadn't had the full-time training, the strength and conditioning that a lot of the other lads had from 16. So I was catching up with that. So that's probably why I was maybe a year or so later than I would have done if I'd have known what I know now, and I'd have started a regime probably a lot earlier, which they would do, which lads do now, because there's obviously the sports science, strength and conditioning, the nutrition. There's a lot more that the lads benefit from that expertise that is within the game now, and within sport in general. So there is that aspect of it. But the big thing is really the self-belief. And this is where it comes down to educating the kids when they're younger, to actually give them this self-awareness, the self-esteem, the ability to think for themselves, the ability that, and then it's we have to educate parents, we have to educate coaches, we have to actually educate clubs that the kids are going to be better prepared and make better players. There was a study in, I think it was Borussia Dortmund, that I'd looked into when I wrote an article about a year or so ago about the academies and the system. They said that the ideal time to take players into a football academy was probably after they'd gone through their early learning and puberty. So it was between 11 to 13. They encouraged them, if they didn't do probably 3 or 4 different disciplines and sports before then, they did all the testing, the physical testing, to say that they were better prepared, they were stronger, more flexible by doing all of the other disciplines, whether they were doing boxing, judo, athletics, rugby, cricket in the summer, badminton, tennis, loads of different things that will help with their coordination, their strength, their flexibility. In other words, everything that goes into making a football in this aspect. But they said they wouldn't have done it if they'd have actually just concentrated on one sport from an early age. Actually, I believe is detrimental, and a lot of the are agreeing with that way, in the fact that we're looking at the whole person. If the whole person then is good enough to be a professional, they want to be a footballer, for instance, then they will have the best chance of doing that if they've got all of the things in their toolbox, as opposed to just being able to control a football. Technically, be very good, but have they learned to do it in certain situations? Have they learned to think for themselves, which is the other thing that we're talking about? Because I believe that we're turning out too many what I call robotic players.
Yeah, definitely.
That under pressure, and this is where we talk about. This is where a lot of the stuff that I do in the performance work that I do, Jimmy. It's basically about teaching the kids to actually get in the zone, or what we would call in flow, so that they can perform under pressure. Whereas you can see, I see it in some of the England games that we've witnessed, where say against Iceland and whatever. You'd even got the manager who was actually just.
Yeah.
We talk about fight or flight or freeze.
Yeah.
You could see that the manager just froze, didn't he? He didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Some of the players just froze, or just kind of thought, oh, "What's plan B?"
Yeah.
Because they couldn't actually think outside the box, because they've not been taught to do that. And before, because the thing is, it's all what I call anaesthetized. It's too set up. When, as a young boy, did you, when you played outside with your mates, you went down the park, you played either football, played cricket, tennis, whatever. We didn't usually have grown-ups or people setting things up. You didn't usually have a pitch marked out properly. You just put the goalpost, you put your jumpers down or whatever, or your bags down. But it was very rare that you had an organised situation where there was too much pressure on the kids. We used to play all day. Now, sometimes when you wanted a break, you either went home for some lunch or whatever, scoffed it down and then went straight back out and played, or if you wanted a rest, you just went and sat behind the goals. You sit it out for 10 minutes till you were okay, and then you just come back. But you couldn't do that if you've got an organised game. You've got the coach there. You feel you're under pressure to perform.
Yeah.
And then even if you're injured, I've had stories about this, that even kids of 8 years old, when they're injured, they're being forced to carry on because the coach says, "Oh, come on, we need you. We haven't got a sub." And I'm thinking, it's crazy.
No, it is.
There's so much pressure on the kids now, because they feel that they've got to perform, whereas they should be going out and enjoying it at that age, playing with their mates, and they shouldn't. The kids make the rules up. There was never any problem. If it was a foul, everybody agreed, "Oh yeah, that's a foul." There wasn't any. We didn't even have a referee, did we? You just carried on with it.
Yeah.
Whereas now, the kids are waiting for a referee to make a decision. They're waiting for the coach to tell them where to pass it, or the other parents on the side screaming at their kids saying, "Come on, little Jimmy, pass it there." And you're waiting for instructions about told what to do, as opposed to just
natural
playing.
Skill. Yeah, exactly.
And then your natural ability, and then we work it out. We work it out naturally how to make an angle, or whether to run, or whether to actually hold. Now, if as a kid you held the ball and then there was an older lad comes up and then you beat him, you suddenly learn, you get a sixth sense that the next time you're going to do that, he's going to think, oh, can't have this little whippersnapper Jimmy Petruzzi going past me again. Bump! He's going to kick you up in the air. But then you learn to actually understand that, oh, I've got to learn to look after myself. I've got to learn to actually understand that people are going to maybe try and tackle me and not let me do various things. So you develop a sixth sense of how to look after yourself and when to knock it off and when to actually knock it off first time, when to make, you learn the game. And people do that naturally. They don't have to be always coached on how to do it.
Definitely not.
George Best wasn't coached. Gascoigne wasn't coached, etc., etc.
No, precisely. I think that's a great point. I think that I think they are changing from what I can see in my observations. They are looking to go back to that. But it's still fabricating games, but they are looking to sort of like, increase that a bit more and more. Certainly my own experience looking at things passively, I think that England the last 5-10 years have made some big changes, and I've been down to St George's Hall and I've looked at coaches and some of the players, 15, 16-year-olds now, are coming through. It's going to take time. And I went to a conference 2 years ago at St George's Hall, the home of football now, the training complex, and I was watching a few videos, spoke to a few people, and I said at that point, and I didn't say it loosely, I watched some of the videos of the young players playing against other teams like Brazil and France. And I said, I think in 15 years, England will win a major tournament, be it European, be it the world. And the reason being, I think that they're sort of caught on now, Mel. I think they have caught on to a point, but there's still a long way to go. And we're seeing that now in the younger teams, the 17s and the 20s have won major tournaments. But my only concern is now is that the pressure, and all of a sudden now you've got people saying they should play him and put him in the first team. And first team football, as no doubt, you'll know more than me, Mel, there's a big difference than playing youth team football. It's a huge difference in the sense that you're playing against grown men who are physically stronger, mentally have been around the block and professionally know all the tricks and that sort of stuff. And I think for me, as much as some of these young players great they're coming through, I still think it's about nurturing them and giving them a chance at the right time and not putting them at the deep end, so to speak, straight away, and putting expectations on them too. I think that let them play, let them enjoy it, let them go out there and just enjoy their game and see where the road takes them. I think that the pressure on them to deliver sometimes can be overwhelming for me. And that's why I think people like yourself come in, and it's crucial to take players to one side and say, you know what, go out there and enjoy it. The only way you're going to play well if you're enjoying it. If you're sort of structured and you're thinking too much about the game consciously, and it can't really be a good thing, really. And I think some of the stuff that you say too, Mel, for me is important, not just in sport, but also you transfer those skills to life too. Now, whether you make it as a footballer or sports person or not, if you've got that self-belief, if you've got that confidence and motivation, wherever you go in life, you're going to do pretty well. If you take those skills in business, you take them in personal life, because in life you're going to get setbacks. In business, you're going to get setbacks. In personal life, you're going to get setbacks. And if you've got that confidence, motivation, that sort of self-belief, wherever you go, you're gonna do pretty well, And that for me is teaching them young, not just for football, for me, just life in general. That's how I used to think as a coach. But I used to think, how can I help this person be the best they can be as a human being? Not just a footballer, as a human being, be educated, the right values, compassion to people, gratitude, teach them things that are going to help them in life too. I used to always think, okay, my obligation is to give them the best chance to be a footballer, but I'm also going to think how it's going to help them to be the best they can be as a human being, professionally and personally, and encourage them to just be, like you said before, the best version of self. And I think everything else looks after itself after that. For me, that's the important point, for sure, definitely. And your thoughts, Mel, in transferring these skills across other areas of life? Do you think that, in your experience, that the skills that you learned, that self-belief, breaking through as a 21-year-old and scoring in front of 100,000 fans and all those sort of things, do you find that skills you've transferred in life, in what you do generally? Have they worked for you well, or?
No, absolutely. I think that it's all about being the best version of ourselves that we can be. Everything else will fall into place. When you just you can't. It's. I think the saying is, how you do one thing is how you do everything. If you've got a situation where kids feel that they have to act like a professional footballer at 6, 7, and 8, it's absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. But you see these characteristics when you see these kids. You know, they feel that they've got to act like a professional because they see this on the TV. They see this on Match of the Day or Sky or whatever. And they feel that they've got to act. Because when kids take on the persona of the people that they're trying to emulate. So if they see first team players, they're walking in with their headphones on and their wash bags, and they're doing all this, and they're acting as though they're professionals already. That's the way you'll see 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds acting, because they've got their first Man City, Man United tracksuit on or whatever. And you're thinking, well, yeah, it's crazy. The big thing is we've got to encourage our kids to be the best version of themselves. That also they've got to love themselves without that being in any way stopping everybody else being the best version of them that they can be. So it's being the best version of yourself, which then allows everybody else to be the best version of them. So I think it's Marianne Williamson, isn't it? We have to make sure that everyone's brilliant. Everybody has to allow their light to shine, so that they can then that shines on everybody else to allow them to be the best version of themselves. What we don't want, what the big thing is that because there are less than 1% actually make it, there's this competition element that comes in to say, well, oh, I'm better than you. I'm not going to cooperate with you. I'm not going to pass the ball to you because I want to show how good I am, because they're only going to keep so many people on, or that's what they think is the reality of it. Whereas how it actually works, if you look, and I've been fortunate to know and played against and with some of the best players in the world at the time, and always the best guys are very, very humble. That you would not, unless you knew who they were, you wouldn't actually think that they were a world superstar. The people that have got the chips on their shoulders are the ones that think that they should be where they are, but they're not quite. But the guys that are really doing are really just comfortable with themselves. And this is, and it's always that feeling, that self-esteem, that self-confidence, that humbleness is the key to them actually being the best that they can be. Now, if we can empower our kids and also empower the parents and the coaches to actually understand that, and then also understand that it will help them, that if their parents, because it's not always the clubs that are a problem or the coaches or the way that they do it, the parents can be obviously part of the problem as well as part of the solution. So they have to understand that they've got to live their lives. They've got to be the best example to their kids that they can be.
Yeah.
And the best example isn't expecting the kids and putting pressure on the kids. It's just being completely themselves. And then just, as I say to a lot of parents, especially the dads, but it can be the moms as well. Where's your little lad going to go to? Or where does he go to when he wants his dad? if you're acting as his coach, his manager, his agent, where's he going to go to if you're the one that's always on to him? Come on, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. You're going to be, you know, you're not going to make it unless you do this. So parents have to understand that. You know, we've all seen the archetypal pushy parent. So, but I think everybody just needs that little bit of education to understand how the best way to actually support their kids, be there for them when they need it, because they always want your love and approval. That's the way we are hardwired. We always want the love and approval of our parents and the coaches and the people around us. So but understanding how that works is key. And if we can get that through to parents in particular, but then also the coaches and the clubs around, especially around the younger ages, then that I think will make a massive difference, and we'll see a sea change in the fact that kids aren't just classed as numbers. They're human beings.
That's a really important point.
Yeah, and then the byproduct is, and I think it's brilliant. You've just mentioned about the England teams winning the World Cup at under 17, at under 20. I think that's absolutely fantastic. It's then just looking at the bigger picture that we will produce kids that can think for themselves, but then the vast majority that don't make it in the game don't fall out of love with the game, because it's not the game's problem. The game is, it's the beautiful game. Also, we don't see the situation where you've got 25% of the players that actually still make it and make it to the top level. 25% of those are actually clinically depressed. It's crazy. Those are the figures, that even the ones that make it, 1 in 4 are clinically depressed. That sounds to everybody else, they would have thought, oh, they've made it. How on earth can they be depressed? Because they're living the dream, but they're not, because we're talking about, we haven't addressed the whole person. It's all about the whole person. It's all about, are they completely comfortable with themselves? Are they completely comfortable with every area of their life? Because that's the thing that hasn't been addressed. It's the thing that hasn't been covered. Yes, because everything's gone into this narrow band of just being a footballer, as opposed to thinking outside the box and saying, right, how do I cope? And if they haven't had, if they haven't had any what we would call failures, or they haven't had any bigger hurdles to overcome, and it's just been fairly straightforward for them because they've been blessed with obviously outstanding ability. Everybody's looked after them, and everything's done for them, and they're very protected. But when they come to do something for themselves, they'll fall down. And it's a bit like the old thing about, if you do everything for your kids, then what do they do when you're not there? What do they do when you can't help them? You've got to empower your kids. Sometimes you have to empower your kids by not giving them everything, by making them work for things themselves. It's a massive subject, but it's getting the balance right, I think, is the key, Jimmy. It's getting the balance right. And I think we've just gone slightly out of balance in the fact that we've got to get back to giving our kids the right environment to grow up in, and the expectations putting them on a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kid is just crazy. absolutely crazy. I mean, I don't know what it was like for you then. I mean, I can just about remember it, but there was no expectation. There was no expectation on me whatsoever, apart from just enjoy yourself. I was blessed. I was really grateful to have a lovely, great parents, great upbringing, and just enjoyed myself most of the time. I can't remember any. I was fortunate not to come through any horrendous episodes as far as that's concerned. I know I did. I've helped a lot of people, and I've come across people that have had, abuse beyond reason, really. As kids and what have you. But as human beings, we have the ability to come through it. And some of the most brilliant individuals I know have had absolutely horrendous upbringings. So I don't think it's what we come through or what's put in front of us, the challenges. I think it's how we come through it and how we bounce back and how we adapt to it. If we hold on to it and don't let it go, and then it will be a problem. But if we can take the event for what it is, but actually let go of the charge around it, then we can move forward, and we can take that event. Like I've taken the event that was probably one of the most horrendous things that's happened to me, was when I was 27, I ruptured my Achilles, and it went bump. It was like I did it in a first division game, which at Watford, which would have been a Premiership game now, and I remember it was 12 minutes past 3, and I remember looking out to the side of me into the crowd, because I thought somebody had got an air pistol and shot me, because all I heard was that clap. And at 27, when I was a late starter anyway, at 21, I'd played 200 odd games, player at the top level. Looking back then, I then went on to play 4 years, virtually on one leg, because I wasn't quite up to speed. But I could class that as a really horrendous event. What I do now is I'm actually really grateful for that to happen, because that led me into a really deep search for how does the medical profession work? How does the human body work? How do we perform at the top? How do we get ultimate performance? And that took me on a search and a journey into various subjects, from everything to do with health, nutrition, how the body works, how the mind-body works, all around the world. And I have done that for the last 30 years. And it's been a never-ending search, and I'm still searching all the time. As we know, I know that you Jimmy, you haven't stopped learning. We don't stop learning about these subjects, about getting the best out of ourselves and helping other people do the same, get the best, be the best version of themselves that they can be. So I look at that as the real start that propelled me into being able to help so many people now. Is that if everything had gone smoothly, and I'd have had another probably getting on for 10 years in the game at the top level, I probably wouldn't have been to actually go out and find the reasons. I probably would have been too comfortable. So I class that as the start of my journey into being able to help so many more people now. And so I think it's just redefining instances. And I've spoken to people that have been abused beyond reason as kids, and they're actually grateful for it now, that it's turned them into being able to help so many more people now. So I think it's just the way that we look at things, And I could have easily said, yeah, I'm a victim. Why me? I could have easily said, yeah, that was because of the cortisone that was put into me, into my legs to get, you know, that was so common then. You know, 30, 40 years ago, it was very common for cortisone injections just to get out and play. So I could easily blame that. I could easily blame one or two things, but I just take it and say that was the spark. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be enabled to help so many people now. So I'm so grateful for it. And I think once we learn to actually be grateful for everything that happens, and that there's kind of a universe out there, or that there is a guiding light, that ultimately knows a little bit better than us how to point us in the right direction. This then comes full circle to the fact that the kids coming through, as long as they have total belief in their own ability, that they will play at the highest level for them and enjoy it, then it will happen for them. Undoubtedly, it's not their job to know which club, that if they get turned down by Manchester City or Man United, that their career's not over. Equally, if they get turned down by Stockport County or Macclesfield, their career's not over. As long as they believe that they can, if all I think their job is to make the most of their ability. That will then everything else will fall into place. Opportunities will come into play. People will come into their lives. Synchronicities will happen because they're in the right place. But if they're worried, or if what we would call, if they're in a negative energy, if they're under stress, if they're angry, if they're fearful, if they're in a situation where they've lost their belief system. Their belief system is that until somebody gives me the opportunity, I can't do anything. Then they'll be waiting around for a long time. If their belief system, if they have the courage to do the right things, to say, okay, I will play wherever I need to play. I will find my own level now. And if that's at a non-league level, at wherever, play to enjoy it, and then it goes on from there. There are countless number of times. Jamie Vardy's a prime example. Kevin Phillips, great goal scorer in his time. He was actually released at Southampton at 18. He actually didn't play up front. They played him at right back when he was an apprentice, 16 to 18. They said he wasn't big enough to play up front. He then went and played non-league. He got a job. He then got picked up by Watford when I think he was about 20. And the rest's history. He's one of the leading goal scorers in the game. And that happens time and time again. But if you've got the belief in your own ability and you actually just go out and do it, and don't understand that because it didn't happen at a certain place, it's not going to happen, then you've got to reverse that. You've got to actually have the belief that I am a player. I am a player. At what level I get to is down to me, but I'm going to enjoy it. So you have to feel. It's really about feeling, because as we know, Jimmy, it's a feelings universe. Everything's down to energy, just vibrating at different levels. If we get our belief and our attitude is what I call in the positive zone or in the green, as opposed to being in all this red stuff, this anger, this fear, this shame and guilt, which is right down at the bottom, this heavy stuff. We know we're ashamed. We get guilty because we haven't done it, because we've let our parents down. We're ashamed that we haven't done it because everything was expected of us. And that's the problems that we're creating for our kids now is we're putting them in an environment where we're making them feel guilty for not progressing at the football club because they feel they've let their parents down. They feel they won't get the approval and love from their parents if they don't do this. Now, this pressure is just it's crazy for me at the younger ages. Once you get into secondary school, you've gone through puberty. Yeah, I think you can more or less see there's going to be a better chance of knowing which lads are going to have got a chance of going forward. But 4, 5, 6, 7, really?
It's ridiculous.
You know, yeah.
It is for sure.
But,
I think so.
The big thing is, as I say, is empowering people to what we would call getting the. There's a great book that I do a lot of my teaching and coaching from when I do my lectures or I do my workshops. From you obviously aware of Dr. David Hawkins' Power versus Force, and he actually has developed an energy scale from 0 to 1,000, and anything up to 200 on that scale is what I would call a negative energy or a red energy, and very low on there is shame and guilt, and then we have apathy, we have fear and anger, until you get into what I would call the empowering energies, where we get the courage to do the right things, the courage to stand in our own beliefs, and then we get into the acceptance of, yeah, shit happens, things happen for various reasons. Then we can go up into the really empowering stuff of the love, joy, and then right into the enlightened states that we understand. All we have to do is get into the courage to step into our own brilliance, and we're there. All we have to do is understand that to get in the flow, to make empowered decisions, all we have to do is get into this empowered state, and this is what we call in the zone or in flow. And that, as I say, the kids especially learn this very quickly, and they take it on board. If we've got a lot of issues, the older we get, it's probably less easier to get in there because we've got all the baggage that we haven't. We've got to get rid of some of the baggage. We've got to get rid of the charge around stuff that's hardwired, that's in our subconscious. And the vast majority of the work that I do is actually helping people get rid of the blocks. I'm just a block remover, basically. I just remove the blocks, and that allows people to actually then have the energy, because they become a lot lighter. Because all these blocks are what we would call heavy stuff. They're down there. We've all got a bit of guilt and shame, and it's a never-ending thing to get rid of some guilt and shame that's surrounding us from when we were kids, that we've bottled up, that we haven't let go of. So once you get kids empowered to actually enjoy themselves, they've got the self-esteem, the self-assurance. They've got the freedom to be themselves, as opposed to being something that they think they've got to be for their parents or for their teachers or for the coach. We're going to give the best gift to our kids that we could ever give them, and we're going to give the best gift to ourselves if we allow ourselves to actually get rid of all of the this negative stuff, this stuff around situations in our past that we've hung on to but not got rid of. You know, so it's all great stuff, Jimmy. And the more people that get to understand this, the more people that we can get to. And I love the work that you do, Jimmy. I've followed you for quite some time. We just need to get out there more, don't we? We need to get it to more people.
I think so. I think that, just getting it out there, sent the stall out, and I'm a big believer is that you just keep going, and as long as you keep going and you've got the right intention, and the right people will come at the right time, and for sure. Now, whatever profession anyone's in, be it football, sport, business, life in general, I think that certain things happen in your life. And for me, one of the emphasis is not stay there for long. You need to stay there. If things don't work out well, then get out of that. Learn from it and move on, and go forward, and spend as little time as you need to spend in that sort of negative state, or not negative in the sense that I think certain states are useful to propel people in using as fuel that burns the fire. So if you end up disappointed, sad, rejected, then use it as a fuel that burns the fire to kick on. Get out of there as quick as you can do, because life is short. And I think for me, at least in this genetic form, for me, it's about going out there and just experiencing the beauty in life. And there's a lot of wonderful things out there. And I think that your best work will come from places when you're in that sort of flow and zone. And I think it's been fascinating, Mel. You've shared some really fascinating insights into what you do. And for me, the work you do is phenomenal. I think that young, or anyone of any age, is going to benefit so much from that sort of stuff. And for the players, the footballers out there, any sports people, it's great that people like yourself who've been there, done that, are able to mentor and pass information on, because it's not easy. Life isn't easy at times, and it can be overwhelming for young players, for anybody in general. To have someone to bounce is quite a useful thing, and as a sounding board to get them out of that state. Just briefly, Mel, is there any way that anyone can get in touch with you? Have you got are you okay to share details as they're sort of watching the interview? I'm mindful that you've been very generous with your time, and sort of come to the close. Is there any way that anyone can get in touch with you?
Well, if people want to look into more what I do, then go to meleves.com, which is MELEVES.com. That's my performance master coach website. Anybody wants to email me, they can just email me at mel@meleves.com. So it's Mel Eves without the A, and it's always a pleasure to speak to people like yourself, Jimmy, who are doing so much good work. And as I say, if it was easy, it'd be boring.
Yeah, exactly.
Life. We're always kind of learning, and we can. The big thing that I think I found is that the search for the situation where you understand that you're in control, no matter what happens. We can choose what we do. We can choose, because we can choose how we think. The first thing is to question our beliefs. So beliefs lead to thoughts. Thoughts lead to our words. Our words lead to our actions. Our actions over a period of time lead to our habits. Our habits form our character, and our character, which is our values system, our character ultimately gives us our destiny. So, and our destiny will give us the results in every area of our life. But you go back, and the way to change our results is to actually go back and question our beliefs and our perception of the world and the perception of what is working for us. Always go back, and the power of our questions around what we believe to be true. Just ask that question: is it true? Is it true that? Is it true? And this is something for young footballers to question: is it true that if I get released, I'm not going to make it? Is it true that somebody making a decision when I am 12 to release me, or 14, or 16, or 18, or 21, is it true that somebody else's decision, for whatever reason, is the deciding factor of my life and what I do? That's what you question. Now the question is that true? Of course it isn't true. There could be 100 reasons why a coach decides not to to release a player at a certain time. It could be they've released a certain player because their son or their nephew plays in the same position, so they want him in the side, and it could be something as straightforward as that you didn't realise. But you take it fully on board that, oh, I'm not good enough now, because we're putting a marker, or we're taking to heart somebody else's opinion about us that really hasn't got anything to do with us. It's all about them. Because what everybody thinks about me isn't really. What everybody thinks about you, Jimmy. Obviously, we can have a big say in that, about how we conduct ourselves, etc. But ultimately, what anybody else thinks about us is all to do with them and where they are and what they're doing and their perception of the world.
That's right. Projection.
We can influence it. We can influence it, but if we're going to be bothered about what other people think, we're all so hardwired to take more notice of something that's negative as opposed to something that's positive. We know that we could have 50 emails that are all pretty good, or even saying, oh, thanks for this, thanks for doing that, Jimmy. That was brilliant. Thanks, great seminar you put on. Great, enjoyed your last workshop. But you have one email saying, oh, I wasn't happy with that, Jim. Yeah, I thought that wasn't up to speed at all. You probably take more notice of that than the 50 that have actually praised you.
That's the brain negativity bias.
Yeah. So we're actually hardwired sometimes to actually be more. And once we understand that we can choose,
you're on the way for sure.
You're on the way for sure to say, well, okay, that guy or that person must have had a bad day saying that, because I'm comfortable with what I did and 50 other people, and basically I can't please all the people all the time. The people that will be that we can help the most will be drawn to us, as opposed to us having to go out and search for people. So, exactly. And that's the way the world works. We will attract. It's law of attraction business, isn't it?
Very much so.
We will attract the people that are going to be that we can help the most. As long as we are in this authentic space, that we are truly, in other words, we say what we think. We are authentic. People can believe that. People believe what we say, because if you're not authentic, people on a gut level know it. You can say all the right things, but if you're not actually on what we would call vibrating at an empowering level, then people will suss it. People will suss that. It's like when politicians give some speeches, you can thinking, well, yeah, it's just come from their head. Exactly, they're just in their head. It hasn't. You can tell the difference between what you would call a heartfelt speech, when you've got your Nelson Mandelas and your Martin Luther Kings. That came from the heart. It didn't come from the head.
That's right, exactly.
That was really and every people that are going to resonate with that will feel it, because that's the way that they want to be. They are, but they're probably not putting themselves on. They haven't had the courage to actually step out before. If we can, I know that part of our job, Jimmy, is to empower people to have the courage to, yes, I will step out and be the best version of me that I can be. And I think that's part of our blueprint and how we're wired up, and that's what we're here to do as well. And we'll all do it slightly differently, because that's what we are. We've got our own unique way of doing things. But we pretty well say the same thing, but we say it differently, but we're all saying the same thing.
very much so. And I think that, for sure, definitely. But I think different people respond differently in different ways. But it's been phenomenal speaking to you. I really want to thank you, Mel, for coming on board. I'm sure that people watching it's out there now, and it'll be out there for people to watch. And if they take one thing on board and this job done, I'm sure I'll take more than that. And I think that I've always say to people on my journey, if one person, as a result of what I do, goes on to do greater things than what they would do, then it's job done. So just keep going. And we've all got the same amount of hours in a day. We get up in the morning, we've all got a choice to do what we want to do. And I always say, behind the behaviour is a belief. You get up in the morning, you've got choice. You can go whichever road you want to do. And the questions you mentioned there are powerful questions. They break people out of that trance state they're in, like that walking trance state that they're in. So, okay, break that state and think clearly, more logically, where am I going? And you get up in the morning and, okay, we're all in different circumstances. Not everyone can just get up and change their life dramatically, but one small thing a day, just one noticeable difference can make a huge impact in one's life. Even just to decide to exercise once a day, or eat better once a day, or even if it's to write a CV, if it's to email somebody, just a few things here and there collectively in time make a huge difference for me. And people can sort of manage that, enroll in the course, read a book, read a page of a book. They're things that people can do for me when they get up in the morning to change the direction of their life towards where they want to go. That's if they want to move in a different direction. If they don't want to move in a different direction, that's their call. They do what they want to do. It's their life. They own it. But if they do want to change, it's not always about, for me, the bowling ball and knocking all the pins down at one goal. Even if it's okay, can we sort of chip away bit by bit and push ourselves as much as we can tolerate to where we want to go. It's been phenomenal. I really enjoyed the interview. It's been great. All the best to Wolves this season. I'm sure things will, I'm going to a game in a couple of weeks against the Bolton game, so I'll be there. It should be interesting, really. But yeah, all the best for the rest of the season, Mel, and do keep in touch for sure. Thanks again, Mel.
Yeah, I look forward to it, Jimmy. Really enjoyed it. All power to you in what you're doing, and I look forward to meeting you up in Manchester or Bolton.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. Take care. All the best, mate. So, thank you.
Thanks.